Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video, doing episode 6 of Strat Watch for today's third video. So it's back to its regular Wednesday slot after being shunted to Fridays over Christmas and New Year, but we're back today on Wednesday. So we're going to go through all the latest stratospheric developments, look at forecast data, and we're going to look at a historic winter as well from a strat perspective. Today we're looking at the winter of 1986-1987, which of course had that tremendous freeze up in January of 1987. Was that stratosphere related? You'll find out in a moment. But just say that first video says our 6 AM UK weather forecast. We've also released a verification, finally, for the autumn 2024 forecast. So have a look at that and see how we did. We're going to be live at 6 PM with your 10 to 14 dayer. So I should see you a little bit later on for our Wednesday evening live stream. Please like, share and subscribe on all of today's videos and content. Thank you so everyone for doing that. Right, so current situation in the stratosphere at 10 HPA over the Arctic of the North Pole looks like this. The black line shows where temperatures have been through this season at 10 HPA and where we currently are versus average, which is the grey line. So we are colder than average with our stratospheric temperature at 10 HPA, and quite substantially so. Now we are beginning to break away more and more from the grey line, which on average would be ticking up. Sorry everyone, which tells us about on average stratospheric temperatures would be ticking up now at this point in January. But you see that the black line is still solidly under minus 70. At this point, we would be getting close, about minus sort of 62, something like that on average. So, as I say, we are breaking away from the grey line. We've got really quite a significantly colder than average stratosphere at 10 HPA. But if we go lower down to 30 HPA, there we're even colder. We are actually hovering under minus 80 and have been doing so through most of this winter. So this wasn't really expected at the beginning of the winter. There wasn't much sign of this very cold stratosphere setting up at the start of winter, which just goes to show again that like stratospheric forecasts are really in their infancy, and it is one of those parts of the weather system, the climate system, that isn't well modelled or well predicted. So we've got very cold stratospheric temperatures and well below average stratospheric temperatures at both 10 and 30 HPA now, and that really ties in with a strengthened and a strong stratospheric polar vortex. So let's have a look at the latest GFS forecast, shall we? So at the moment, we are seeing really quite a substantial warming of stratosphere over Siberia. It's just a little bit shy of what we would classify as reaching SSW, southern stratospheric warming temperature levels, but nevertheless, really quite a big warming over Siberia. But you see that over the pole itself, over the Arctic, over the North Pole, we have both blue and purple colours well and truly entrenched at 10 HPA, 60 degrees north. Those are the cold temperatures and well below average temperatures, but we've got should we get everybody at 10 HPA? Well, let's run through and see what happens. So that warming of stratosphere actually intensifies a bit more over the next 24 hours or so over Siberia, just about reaches SSW type temperature levels, but not able to impact the pole. So in the next few days, that's going to go spiraling off towards the Pacific side of the Arctic, leaving the blue and purple colours still well and truly entrenched here at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over the North Pole. A little bit of a displacement event when we get into next week. Notice that the blue and purple colours are increasingly being pushed out in towards the North Atlantic and Northern Europe as well. And over the pole itself, possibly lifting the temperature up a little bit, not an SSW, and that certainly won't reverse the zone of wind, but it does look as though we have a bit of a displacement of the stratospheric polar vortex going on there through the course of next week. In the extended range, which is how things are looking, so, I mean, we just see the blue and purple colours continuing really displaced a little bit in towards Northern Europe and into the North Atlantic, with somewhat warmer temperatures in the stratosphere through Canada and back in towards eastern portions of Siberia. But no evidence there of an SSW, sudden stratospheric warming event, within the next couple of weeks. And up to the 24th of January, the stratospheric polar vortex, those blue and purple colours, are still well and truly entrenched, or well and truly in business there. So a little bit of a displacement of the stratospheric polar vortex, yes, next week, but no evidence of anything overly dramatic going on in the next couple of weeks. Of course, that only gets us 2 weeks out. Let's have a look at the more extended data. These are the weekly mean temperature anomalies at 10 HPA. So this is next week, taking us from the 13th to the 20th of January. Based on the warming that we've just been looking at, moving around the Pacific side and towards Canada of the Arctic, with the displacement event of the stratospheric polar vortex down into the North Atlantic and Northern Europe. That's week 2, which is the 27th of January. By then, the blue colours begin to push back up towards the pole anyway. That's week 3, still seeing those blue colours there. Those are the cold temperatures, stratospheric polar vortex essentially, particularly on the Siberian side of the Arctic and the pole. That's week 4, which is the 3rd to 10th of February, and finally that is week 5, 10th to 17th of February. Up to that point, absolutely no sign of an SSW, sudden stratospheric warming event whatsoever. In fact, it looks as though once this week's warming eases off next week, excuse me again, everybody. Once this week's warming eases off next week, there is no sign of any further renewed warming. Of course, these forecasts for the stratosphere are very much in their infancy. They're very unreliable, so a major warming of the stratosphere could occur at any point between now and the 17th of February, but there's no evidence for it, okay, within that. So this could be a winter, but does not have an SSW at any point in it. This is how the zone of wind forecast is looking for the next 6 weeks. So again, we see very, very strong, record-breaking strong zone of wind at 10 HPA, 60 degrees north at the moment in the stratosphere. So the stratospheric polar vortex is at a record-breaking strong level. I don't think it is in the troposphere. And we have actually had a decoupling of the strat and the trop over the past couple of weeks, which is why we've had the northern blocking and also the cold weather that we've had. So that is always something to keep in mind. Just because you're not getting SSW does not mean you can't still get northern blocking and cold weather as a result from a decoupling of the stratosphere and the troposphere. We have had a decoupling of the strat and the trop over the past week. Now, we are going to see a little bit of a weakening of the stratospheric polar vortex next week. That's as we get back to displacement event, but only a weakening. It's still going to be stronger than average, which is this red line, and basically keeping a strong or a very strong stratospheric polar vortex going right the way towards the end of February there, into the second half of February anyway. So have got one or two outlier ensemble plume members that are going for a reversal of the zone of winds. There's only a handful of those. So, if you want an SSW, sorry again, but I sound dodgy, but I'm fine. There's just something not right with my throat at the moment. But health-wise, I feel great. I don't feel sick at all. But I know a few of you are a bit concerned about how I'm sounding, but I'm fine, honestly. But anyway, back to business. This could well be a winter that does not have an SSW. There's no evidence on any forecast data here of a major sudden stratospheric warming event happening before the middle of February anyway. Now, if you want an SSW, it's a pretty bleak time. But in the GavsWeatherVids winter forecast, we did say, but it is quite possible this could be a winter without a sudden stratospheric warming event due to being at solar maximum, and it's a westerly cubio winter as well. So we're just going to wait and see how it works out. Of course, it's still quite early days in the winter. It's only the 8th of January, and we may get an SSW, in February. They do become more likely as we go further on. But of course, if an SSW happens in February, especially later in February, then that's going to have more of an impact on the spring, which is not necessarily what a lot of you want. Well, this season of Strat Watch, we are doing reanalysis as well. We're looking at a historic winter every week. This week I've picked out the winter of 1986, 1987, given that the big freeze of January 1987 was beginning to start getting going around now. So let's see whether there was any stratospheric development before that big freeze. We're starting off on the 1st of December 1986. Got these blue colours here over the pole, down into northern Europe, a bit of a warming happening over the far eastern portion of Siberia there, but basically a nice strong polar vortex to start us off in this winter. Let's go through to the 7th of December. Not much change with the overall setup. 12th of December 1986 looking like that. So that's unusual. A little bit of warming has happened over Northern America. It has stretched the polar vortex a little bit there on the 12th of December, but still well and truly in business. We still see a clearly defined stratospheric polar vortex. Let's go through to the 15th of December. So again, got a bit of a warming happening over Siberia. Very modest, very slight, but that's enough to bring a bit of a displacement of those blue and purple colours more towards the Canadian, North American side of Greenland onto the 20th of December. Again, slight warmings over Siberia, perhaps a bit above average of the stratospheric temperature, but to overall... Overall, the blue colours are still sitting there over the pole and over Greenland as well. This is Christmas Day in 1986, so again, maybe some sort of a warming trying to get going over Siberia, very slight, very modest. Over pole itself and towards Greenland and Canada, still have that nicely entrenched stratospheric polar vortex. Go a few more days out to 27th. Now the warming is beginning to be a little bit stronger over Siberia, but still very modest. But there is a bit of a displacement that is going on of the stratospheric polar vortex during this December. So it's quite an unusual December with a displacement of the stratospheric polar vortex over towards Canada and the North Atlantic, but without any particular dramatic warming. So that's quite an unusual, unusual sort of scenario. That's the 29th of December. Again, we still see that displacement of them, but definitely no major warming in December of 1986 anyway, and that's how we end up. The displacement event continues, and modest warming, slight warming also continues over Russia and Siberia. Well, let's go through to January, which, as I say, had that really intense freeze up, and see what happened. So this is the first day of January 1987, New Year. We're about a week, 10 days away from the start of a big freeze. And again, displacement of the polar vortex into stratospheric polar vortex into Canada, Greenland and the North Atlantic. A little bit of a warming there over western parts of Russia. That's the 4th of January. The warming is gathering pace slightly, but the blue and purple colours, again, continuing to be displaced in towards Canada, Greenland and the North Atlantic. Very unusual, very, very, very unusual, this, to get this continuous displacement without any significant warming causing it. So I'm not sure why this displacement happened particularly. This is the 7th of January, so we're very close to the start of a big freeze. Now, again, displacement of PV. That is the 8th of January. The blue and purple colours still continuing around Greenland in the North Atlantic. But you'll notice there is no SSW, no sun stratospheric warming event until we get to the 10th. Now, this is when the cold the big freeze is actually kicking off, though. Now, this warming here is not inducing the big freeze, but he's probably perhaps being caused by the blocking. That's causing the big freeze, but that warming is not inducing the big freeze, if you get what I mean. That is the 11th of January. Again, quite a significant warming, short of an SSW, quite a significant warming there, moving in towards the pole itself. So quite interesting as the big freeze is going on, and the big freeze really is on now across much of northern Europe. There's a big freeze is going on, but it's quite a significant warming of the stratosphere that's probably induced by the blocking, though, rather than being the cause of the blocking. This warming is probably being induced by the blocking, I think. 13th of January, the big freeze is well and I can show you the actual chart here. Here we go. So check that out. That's a beauty if you want a big freeze with high pressure up to sorry once more, everyone. High pressure towards Scandinavia, low pressure across southern Europe, and check out those easters going all the way back into the Urals. This brings perhaps the coldest single spell of weather to Western Europe since 1740. Absolutely unbelievably cold, with maximum temperatures into southern and eastern England not getting much above -6, -7 all day, and loads of snow as well. But it was not that. Big freeze was not caused by an SSW. I say we did see a rather unusual displacement of the polar vortex, stratospheric polar vortex, through December into the new year of 86, 87, but no SSW preceded that big freeze, so that was not caused in any way really by stratospheric developments. I don't think it was just like a decoupling of the stratosphere and the troposphere. That's the 15th of January. Maybe another warming started to try and get going over Russia there, and this is now reaching a proper SSW. This is 17th of January, so we are now coming out of the worst of the big freeze across northern and western Europe, and as we do so, we find that an SSW is beginning to gather pace there over Russia. That is the 20th of January. I think now the zone of wind has reversed with a displacement event of the polar vortex. See the brightest of the colours are pushed into the top of the pole itself. So an SSW does happen in this winter, but it happens after the severe cold spell. And he's maybe, as I say, induced actually by the blocking that brought us the severe cold spell. That's the 24th of January. Again, we see significant stratospheric warming has occurred with the displacement event of the stratospheric polar vortex. And I think what this SSW does, 29th of January again, will we maintain as well. I think what this SSW does actually takes the coldest of weather, I think, into North America during February of 1987. February 87 was not overly cold for Western Europe and for the UK. We did, I think, have some colder interludes during that February, but not a huge amount. But the coldest weather was in January, and then the blocking did come back in March, though. So this SSW perhaps plays in to really quite a cold and wintry March in 1987, followed potentially by a very warm April with a lot of high pressure. We had a really cold wintry March in 87, and then a mostly dry, and for the time, not that unusual now, but for the time, very warm April. So possibly this SSW does play into that more, than like the winter developments. That's the 10th of January. By now, things not looking particularly interesting from a stratospheric level, but of course the SSW has already occurred. 14th of February, Valentine's Day, and we'll just go through to month's end. That's 28th of February. By then, the stratospheric polar vortex is trying to reform over Canada and Greenland. So very interesting and very different winter with that one. well, the big freeze, you know, the coldest part of winter for northern and western Europe, and it is brutal cold and extreme cold as well, was not caused at all by any SSW or any particularly notable stratospheric development, other than December did see displacement of the polar vortex into Canada and the North Atlantic quite a lot of the time. But I don't think that was the reason for, like, the big freeze. The big freeze happened due to decoupling between the troposphere and the stratosphere that allowed a Scandinavian high to set up and brought in those extreme cold easterly winds. An SSW then occurred after that big freeze, perhaps induced by the blocking itself, but caused a big freeze. So eventually that perhaps impacted the stratosphere, and we did then go off into an SSW second half of January 1987, which I think took the cold more to America in February, but then we did have a very, very cold and wintry March in 1987 with quite a lot of snow as well. So an interesting winter for a stratospheric development point of view. We shall do another historic winter next week for you as part of episode 7 of Strat Watch. If you have enjoyed episode 6 of Strat Watch, please you like, share and subscribe, and we're going to be back with your live stream at 6 p.m. We're live streaming our 10 to 14 there, so I'll see you a little bit later on live on the channel if you're around. But for this one, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.